Welcome back to Nutrition Connection, the show where science meets storytelling. I'm your host, Dr. Kristen Hicks-Roof, dietitian, researcher, and lifelong advocate of the role of nutrition, health, and wellness. Each episode, I sit down with dietitians and nutrition experts all across the food and healthcare landscape, leaders whose work touches nearly every aspect of our lives. So whether you're a student, a seasoned professional, or someone simply curious about the role of nutrition, health, and wellness, this podcast is just for you. The views, thoughts, and comments on this podcast do not reflect those of my employer nor the employers of my guests. So let's go ahead and get connected. Today, I'm super excited to bring on our guest. We have Jenna Braddock. She's a master of all trades. Let me tell you, she's a sports dietitian. She's an educator. She's a counselor. She's a trainer. She's an author with JennaBraddock.com and Rhythm Sports Nutrition. So welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thank you, Kristen. I am so excited to be here with you today.
And Jenna and I have crossed paths. So we actually, when I first started the University of North Florida, I remember Jenna was like a mentor to me as she was also a faculty member there. And so it was really cool. It's awesome to be able to maintain those connections. And we've got to see each other over the last, 10 years through different roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, I feel really honored to get to have seen you kind of early on in your research excitement and where that's really propelled you today. I am such a fan of you, Kristen, and it is just really cool to see you continue to evolve and have this tremendous impact in our field.
It's so much fun. So Jenna, but what inspired you and made you want to become a nutrition professional in the first place?
So my story does start in childhood for sure. So first and foremost, my dad was a marriage and family therapist, which I'm very grateful for. While it might have been a little weird that I knew what codependency was at age 8, what it really did is expose me to the importance of communicating, working one-on-one with people, and the power that that can have. And while I didn't always know day to day what my dad was doing, I knew he was making an impact in people's lives. When they had problems, he was helping them solve them. And he was also very much an entrepreneur in that he had his own business and would okay, we need to add some income. I'm going to go speak, So it really opened my world to that kind of possibility from that sense. And then as a high schooler, I played volleyball, and that was my passion and my sport. And when I really began to engage and look to elevate my performance, I was very blessed to have worked with a trainer who actually began to teach me how to eat. And it was basic, whole foods, put good stuff in your body and good stuff is going to come. So I went from eating peanut M&Ms after school before practice to actually having legit lunch and snacks. And I was like, oh my word, I feel so much better.
Oh, yeah. It's so powerful.
It's so powerful. So those two things kind of positioned me as I went into college at Florida State, go Noles, to want to pursue psychology with a minor in nutrition. I was I didn't even know what a dietitian was at that time, but I'm these two have something to do with each other, and that's what I want to do. And so my freshman year, I took a nutrition class. It blew my mind. I was like, what? This is science? This is tech? What? I was like, this is what I want. And so I switched my major. So major was nutrition dietetics, minor was psychology. And then I never looked back. And because of my history in sports, I knew I wanted to work with athletes right out of the gate. And it was just so cool to kind of have that psychology background to know these two things really interact. And that's still something that I am passionate about to this day.
Yeah, I always thought I was going to be in the sports dietetics realm because that's actually how I got into. I was an athlete in high school, and I realized, wow, when I eat crappy, I get hurt and I'm not recovering better. You know what I mean? And even though I'm still not perfect to this day,
Sure.
You do see that connection, and it really is so powerful. And I also love the intro to nutrition class for non-majors. I used to teach that class, and I think you used to teach it too at UNF.
Yeah.
And when you see that light bulb moment in someone who is not a nutrition major and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a career path. I can do this for the rest of my life. It's just so cool.
It is.
So let's discuss your journey. You have a ton of credentials, a lot of sports credentials. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what those credentials are and then talk about your journey into where you are today, which is owning your own practice.
For sure. I feel like, so I've been a dietitian for 20 years now. In November, I celebrated 20 years, which is
Awesome.
bananas to me. And I feel like my career, particularly with sports, is a little bit of the history of sports dietitians. And so I became a dietitian in 2005. And at that time, like I said, I knew out of the gate I wanted to work with athletes. I love performance. It's so straightforward. And I love sports. And that's still true to this day. And so at that time, that was when the CSSD, the Certified Specialist in Sports Dietetics, it really first came out. And as soon as I learned about it, I was like, what do I need to do to get that? And so I was probably in like the second or third round of people really early on that got that certification. I was able to use my master's work to kind of contribute and accelerate that process. So I was at a point early in my career where I was like, okay, the job that I want doesn't exist. So how do I make this happen? Like, that's always been my mindset. I've never been a traditional role kind of gal. So I began to pursue a lot of consulting roles, sports facilities, performance facilities. And then I had some traditional roles. I worked in long-term care. I did traditional MNT. I worked at the Y. I saw the Y as a really great opportunity to just work with a wide variety of people. And even early on, I cold called Jacksonville University in Jacksonville, Florida, and said, you need a sports dietitian. I need to be it. And, long story short, ended up as their first consulting sports dietitian there. So really like the first 5 to 8 years of my career were this like mixed bag of all different types of opportunities. Some that I'm like, this is exactly what I do. And other things I'm like, this is paying the bills and helping just kind of buy me some time here. And
Well,
I'm
and
actually,
I think what you're saying in the sense of like you have to go out and sometimes make the job. You know what I mean? Like cold calling. It's so funny because people who I know who end up having a very successful independent career is because they make it happen. So it's not
Mhm.
like these just fell into your lap,
No,
right? Yeah.
no, not at all. Not at all. And networking is a part of it, and sometimes you're planting seeds that you don't see necessarily unfold for years later. But yeah, so I had a kind of real mixed opportunities there, worked into a role with the Y running their diabetes prevention program. So community health was a big part of my role. And, that led into opportunities at University of North Florida, actually teaching. I realized at that time that I really did enjoy teaching. And so that opened up a role where I went into a faculty position there for about 8 years where we met each other. But also during that time was really when internet business exploded. So dietitians for the first time were doing blogs and recipe development. And then, I was in a career where we didn't have social media and then we did have social media, which we talk all day just about that enormous change. And also through the variety of roles, I got some opportunities to do media work and realized, oh, I really love talking to a camera, and to people and making nutrition make sense to people. So again, just a lot of eclectic stuff and opportunities that came up. And all of us kind of learning and growing, like, how do we have a successful practice that's not just traditional, that's also communicating on social media and using blogs and all of that. And so through some of those opportunities, I ended up getting a really cool consulting role for Johnson and Johnson, working in their corporate wellness with performance and energy management. That not just opened up opportunity for a little bit more consistent outside income, but also really changed my life in learning about the importance of energy management, not just from straightforward physical energy, but also emotional, mental, and spiritual energy as well. And so I'd say that experience really kind of unlocked the next phase of my career and where I am now, where I was able to eventually leave my teaching position because I realized at that time, this was about 2018, I was like, nutrition's at a point where I can either invest in becoming a really excellent faculty and teaching and bringing change to how we educate our future dietitians, or I can invest in staying on top of all the craziness of nutrition and being a really great practitioner. And that was a crossroads for me where I really decided I love practicing the most. And so I made that transition into my own business. And so that's brought me to where I am today. And there's lots of twists and turns. And what I'm doing next year may not be what I'm doing this year. But, I have my own business now that has a few different arms to it. One of which is private practice and counseling people virtually across the country.
Yeah, I mean, you really have had lots of twists and turns, and you bring back when you were talking, you said that when you were a faculty member, you really get exposed to the media. I remember, so for those of you who don't know, right, Jenna and I, we worked at University of North Florida together, and our chair at the time, Dr. Judy Rodriguez, which shout out to Judy, she's amazing.
She is
She
amazing.
was like, "We've lined up media spots in TV and newspaper, and you have to, as
Mhm.
faculty, sign up for one." And it's coming from someone who had never done media before, I was like, this is
This is
terrifying, you know?
amazing.
But it created such an opportunity to get comfort and confidence in speaking and doing, a live TV segment, which if you would ask me 10 years ago, I would have never said that that was my jam. But it almost like planted the seed for you too, in the sense of like it created so many opportunities, and you really have to practice. You're
Mm,
not going to be perfect on
yeah.
the first get go.
Yeah, looking back, I mean, I started doing media probably in like 2009, and looking back, like even like learning how to do my makeup for TV so you don't look like a scarecrow on TV. All of those things you cringe, but the only way you get better is to move forward and keep doing it. And I do just want to put a pin in what you've just said to just really highlight the importance of having amazing, older, wiser practitioners, dietitians, or whoever, mentors in your life that look at you and say, oh, yeah, you're doing this. Like, you can do it. And here's how. And we were so blessed at that season at UNF to have some of the like matriarchs of dietetics
I know.
mentoring us, who just have been doing it forever and like could see and were never threatened by younger people coming in and doing things they've done before. Instead, they invested in us and equipped us. And that, if that's not a message for all of us, particularly in this profession, is like, and being in middle age now, 40s, like I recognize, oh, it's my turn. It's my turn to deposit in these younger practitioners and help support them and see them succeed like people did for me as well.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we were talking before we started recording, like one of the impetus of this podcast was that people reach out to me, and I know they reach out to you all the time, like getting advice or feedback. And it's like, how can we have this platform where people can tune in, listen to episodes, get advice, learn about career paths?
Mhm.
Because let me tell you, where people are today in their career, they didn't start there. It took a
Absolutely.
lot of bumps and turns in the road and
You did.
opportunities and saying yes to things that you do feel uncomfortable in to
Mhm.
be able to get to that point in your life. And you need strong mentors to be able to guide you. So it's cool that we now get to come on the mentoring side.
Agreed.
So you've had a lot of sports in your history, and still to this day, you still do a lot of sports. But I
Mhm.
do want to talk some about the menopausal work that you do.
Yeah,
'Cause I think it's super niche and cool. So talk to me. What do you do in your current role?
mhm,
And give us some opportunities. You said you have different components of your business, so maybe elaborate some on that.
for sure. Well, back up just a moment to connect back to the sports. I realized early on in my career, just from a practical standpoint, that working full time in sports is a very all encompassing profession or career
Yes. Well,
path.
your husband's a football coach,
Yes,
right?
my
So you like
husband's a
you
football
are
coach as well.
immersed.
We live it. We are nuts about football in this family. But what I realized, especially at that point in my marriage, in my relationship, we were looking to have a family, and I was like, "Oh man, I don't know if these two things can drive or jive together, so I better be creative." So that kind of drove me to looking for other opportunities. But what I've really learned along the way and working with a lot of different people is everybody actually wants to perform in their life. Everybody wants to show up and have great energy for the people and things that matter to them, whether that's in the boardroom or at your work or as a mom or a dad or as a community member, not just athletes. And so what I've really been working to do in the past, say, 10 years is really bridge some of these concepts from traditional sports nutrition into the world of everybody else. And so now the way that I describe what I do, and I'm going to kind of make it very succinct because I'm working on getting my elevator pitch down. But I help high performers, 40 and up, and elite athletes build personalized rhythms with nutrition, fitness, and lifestyle to show up with great energy and live out their purpose for the people and things that matter most to them. And so I really take a holistic approach when I work with people. And in fact, someone 2 days ago, I was just getting started with him and he goes, "Oh, this is not what I expected we were going to talk about today, but I really love it." And that's one of my favorite things to hear because
Yeah.
it's not just like eat fiber. Fiber's so important, but like we don't even get there till like multiple sessions in. So I've really found this place of working with high performers, 40 and up, as well as elite athletes. And why menopause has come into that is because several years ago, I began to hear from women kind of the same story with different details. I've been doing the exact same things I've always done, but my body no longer responds well. I have terrible energy. My body hurts. I can't think clearly. Where did this belly fat come from? And I was like, I have no idea, but I'm going to figure it out. Like I did not like hearing women feel like they entered this random period of their life and like no longer had energy to do the things that were important to them. And it just became this overwhelming experience in their bodies. So that led me into the world of menopause research. And truthfully, it was before even this huge wave has happened in our culture and media. It was before then where I was just kind of finding some of those people who are now major voices in this space and just like dove in. And I was like, oh my word, there is this big thing happening that no one is prepared for. And when I realized some of this, the data that like 50% of women entered menopause with zero education and that health literacy alone improves their outcome, I was like, I'm in. I am passionate about that. That's something I can help with, having the gift of teaching and education and meeting people. So that's really what spawned my desire and drive to really get into the menopause space is to be an encouraging and hopeful voice for practitioners and women to navigate menopause with vitality and purpose. So that's what's brought me there. And it's such a cool place. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that God has opened for me to work in that space. But it's not the only group that I work with, but it's super cool. So that's kind of who I focus on in my one-on-one practice. And then I also am a corporate educator and keynote speaker. And my goal there is to deliver high energy, relatable presentations to support personal growth and well being. And then the last component is collaborating with brands looking to provide truly helpful information and strategies that support people living with more energy and purpose. So those are kind of how I distinguish my three pillars in my business, and there's nuance under each of them.
Oh, there's definitely nuance, and it's a lot. I mean, you take on a lot, but one of the things that I really love about kind of how your eyes have been open, I remember I used to teach a grad school class that was called Advanced Concepts in Wellness. And
Mhm.
the students, I remember they came in and they're like, what is wellness? Like,
Yes.
we're dietitians already, you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, there's so much more than just food, right? When you and you mentioned like pieces of it. When we think about wellness, it's environmental wellness, it's workplace wellness, it's
Yes.
spiritual wellness, and there's wellness with food. And so there's these seven dimensions of wellness that all come together. And I think that's so powerful when we as clinicians can work to talk with patients about every aspect of their life. It's not just, hey, eat more fiber or get more high quality sources of protein. It is now, okay, how can we do this in your life? What does your workday look like? How,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? What is your economic status to be able to afford financial wellness?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so all these things come in. So,
So cool.
how does scientific data and evidence really impact what you do in your day to day?
Oh my goodness. It science is always changing, and having done this for 20 years now, and you having an extensive career as well, what we were doing and saying in 2008 is different than what we're doing now. And so just the sheer amount of evidence that we are now getting out and these incredible researchers that we can fangirl over because of the incredible data they're giving us to work with for people. So a lot of what I do in my personal time, like how I structure my life, is I do a lot of education. I do a lot of webinars. I read a lot of papers, and that's a personal choice. Like learning is a value of mine. So I'm very driven to do that. I could just spend my whole time learning, I think. But like as I've gotten more into private practice and working with higher level performers, it has called me to increase my knowledge beyond the basics. I mean, we all know that, but like I've dove into having a thorough understanding of supplementation and botanicals and herbs. My last professional goal last year was diving into functional lab testing and really being able to better determine what labs are actually telling us about people's physiology. So it is a constant diving in and looking at and synthesizing that information. I think one of our greatest challenges now as health practitioners, particularly in the nutrition world, is a lot of people are very well informed. It's the podcast culture. I heard it on a podcast, and so I should do it, which thank goodness we all are learning on podcasts. That is not a bad thing. But what I'm finding is people are usually overeducated and they don't actually know how to incorporate what they're learning into their day-to-day lives. Or they're trying to do it all and they are completely overwhelmed and not able to have any semblance of a life that it has meaning to it because all they're doing is wellness. And so for me, staying on top of the science means when someone comes and they have a laundry list of supplements and they're trying to do all these other things, really helping them strip it back and then building in one by one what is actually making a difference for you. And sometimes that means we start with functional lab testing or gut microbiome testing so that they can actually see what's going on in their body and why they do or do not need some of these different things. And so that is very challenging work. I feel like I'm always practicing kind of on the edge of my experience and knowledge because of that, which is exciting and thrilling, but like very challenging as well.
Would if only we got paid to learn, I would be filthy rich because I read so many research papers. It's actually
I know
disturbing how
I
much.
got one over here I need to read probably today when we're done.
But you're right. I think we are almost in an information overload society. And
Mhm.
I mean, I remember even when I was a corporate wellness dietitian, which was, 10 years ago, I was
Yeah.
practicing in this, and people would come and they're like, well, I heard, and this was early social media. I heard my friend go on a gluten-free diet and she is like transforming her life. She feels so good. I'm like, well, she's also not eating like cookies and donuts and chips. Like
Yeah.
it's maybe not the gluten that you need to omit,
Right.
like, maybe there's
Right.
something else going on here, right? And so
Yeah.
I think there's so much when we do have so much health and nutrition information, how do we as clinicians
Mhm.
boil it down and then prioritize it for our
Yeah.
client?
Absolutely. And, I've moved more into the functional space, which I never thought I'd get, but it's just where it's just taken me there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of places in that world where people have wasted a lot of money or gotten a lot of data they haven't done anything with. So for me, just from an ethical standpoint, I am always very on top of myself to make sure what we're doing or testing is actually helpful and that they are understanding their data and we are doing something actionable with it. Because otherwise it's like, well, why'd you just pay all that money to find out this one thing that you didn't actually do anything with? And so that's the job of us. You can pay all the services you want or get them done on your own. And for some people that really works. But the benefit of the registered dietitian nutritionist working one-on-one with someone is saying, okay, let's look at you. I tell my clients, I'm a student of your body now. I'm a student of your physiology. And I call it like my murder mystery board. We're going to put up all the things here and we're going to see the story that your physiology is telling us, especially when we're working with someone who has some complications going on they haven't been able to get answers on. And so science has to help guide us. But then the other piece that I think sometimes gets diluted in our conversation is clinical experience as well. And both of them have a place. So I'm, again, grateful for 20 years of experience and probably only a handful of years here in the functional space to begin to have experience that we layer with the science to help guide and direct our recommendations for people.
Yeah, in science, as a researcher myself for 10 years, science is really hard to do randomized controlled trials, let's say on
Very,
supplements, right? And like
very.
no one person behaves the same way in clinical studies. And I saw it back in my PhD work, all through my, academic life. And so I think you're right. It's a blend of here's science to help inform, but then you also have to have this like realistic clinical practice to
Right.
be able to marry the two to support the patient. And I think with AI and personalized nutrition. And we're just, to me, I think we're like in the infancy stage of
Mhm,
all of this. Like, I think
mhm.
over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to continue to actually see personalized nutrition come to fruition because of advanced testing and because you can use these technologies to synthesize your murder mystery board. You'll be able
Yeah.
to use that to then actually give more clear, individualized advice.
Mhm. Yeah, which terrifies me and excites me all at the same time, right? And
Oh, yeah. No,
the question I'm constantly asking me in this work that I do is, what can I offer that's different than the computer? And the answer I will always go back to is empathy, concern, and personal relationship, which granted, computers are even trying to dip into that, which we should be cautious of, but like that is always something that I can bring. And then clinical experience. Clinical experience. You know, my dad is a marriage and family therapist. He's like, eventually you get to the place where people begin to pay you for your experience, you know, not just what you know, but your experience. And so that's a really powerful thing that we have that a computer does not.
yeah. No, I totally agree. So, what is your most favorite or something you're most proud of in your career so far?
Um, I have a lot of different examples through the way that have been like kind of guiding lights that, hey, we're on the right path here. I think one of my very favorite things is, and I alluded to this earlier, but when you have a moment in one-on-one counseling where a light bulb goes off for someone, and I do a lot of behavior change work. So we're looking, you know, I'm not a mental health therapist, but like we work on the fringes of that as it relates back to nutrition and lifestyle for health. And so hearing someone make a connection between a behavior and where that originated from or what it's actually connected to, and we pulled the layers back, we get to the core of motivation. And that is the secret sauce to me of like, okay, we've finally unlocked why this is a barrier. Cause I love to say most people know what to do and they're not doing it. So I like to help you figure out what's going on in between those two things. And so having those light bulb moments is so incredible. And I can give you specific stories too, but that's one. And then the other one, just from this past year, speaking at a conference to health practitioners on menopause, one of the pieces of feedback I got back from a practitioner was, and I'm just say it exactly how she wrote it because it just was so cute. It was like, girl, you have brought me and my patients hope. And
Oh,
that when I get that, that is, oh, I'll live off that for years. That's just food for my soul because I don't want to just get up there and say facts and science and random things. I want to give people hope that I always say when people interact with my content or my words or my sessions, I want them to leave saying, oh, I can do that. That's one of my core values I want people to feel. And so to hear that in that experience meant so much to me because that's exactly what I'm on a mission to do.
I mean, that is such a feel good story, though. Like, it's just like when you're a student, right? Or when you were teaching students, like, all you needed was one student or one patient or one person in a crowd of 100 to have that profound inspiration and impact. And that, it, I don't even know. I can feel the feeling that you're feeling because I've felt it myself.
Yeah.
It's like this overwhelming sensation of almost happiness that you're like, I was part of that.
Yeah.
Like I helped to transform that person's life
Mhm.
and forever their life may be changed because of what a piece that I did, a piece
Just
that
a
I
piece.
did, right?
I'm just
Yeah.
planting a little seed. You know, and for me, like, having that experience this year was just so confirming, like, A, I'm doing exactly what I'm called to do, and, like, God has opened doors for me to impact people's lives, and that is something I do not take lightly. And, yes, I enjoy advancing and doing more, and certainly increasing my income is a piece of that, like, for sure. But just knowing, like, I was in a place where I said the right thing at the right time to the right person, and now who knows what might change in that practitioner's practice, like, it does, it gets you. It's
I
like,
know.
"Oh, I'm good." Thank you
I
so much. You know, and the hard part is when you're an entrepreneur and you work with for yourself, you get very little performance feedback. You know, there's no meeting with a boss to walk you through how you did this year. Here's your rage, you know. So to get that kind of feedback, and I'm getting better in my practice of getting feedback, whether it's speaking or from clients specifically. So I have that. performance review. But when you get stuff like that you're like, okay, I'm not just talking to a screen, or I'm not just talking to an audience, like someone's receiving this and it's impacting their life. Like that is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So, what suggestions or tips would you have for someone who's interested in a role or a career like yours, which is
Mhm.
pretty diverse, I would say, between the speaking engagements, the private practice, the sports, right? So, what tips would you give them to try and build that sort of successful career?
Yeah, so I'm a very eclectic person, if you haven't noticed. Eventually, I'm gonna have to, like, niche down, as they say, and I'm working there. But, what I'm most grateful from and the advice I most often give students is to cast a wide net at first. For me, that looked like counseling a lot of people and a lot of different people. I knew I wanted to get into counseling and one-on-one. And so whether that was at the Y, whether that was in my master's research at Volunteers in Medicine, working with the working uninsured, whether that was with medical nutrition therapy and Medicaid patients, all the way up to people with tons of resources. Like I have counseled so many different people throughout the first probably half of my career. I learned so much from that time. And I was grateful to have a couple mentors that I could walk through some sessions afterwards to be like, I do not know what just happened there, and learn from that. But again, even if I was like, I never want to do that again, I still was gaining such powerful lessons that now I can translate and use in these almost like tropes of people now. And not to stereotype, but like, okay, I have this experience. I've seen something like this before. And it's so invaluable. And so, working with all different types of people and working one-on-one, I think as the registered dietitian, I know we're not all called to that, but it is something very unique about the RD is that we are all trained to work one-on-one. We all are. And so even if you just dabble in it or just do it for a little tiny bit, I feel like there's so much to glean from that that can be translated to so many other elements of what you may do or what doesn't even exist at this time. And the second thing I would say, and I'm still working on this in my mid 40s, is don't be afraid to mess up and don't be afraid to pivot. We have all pivoted. We've all gotten to a place where we're like, oh, this was it. And then you're like, oh, it's not it. Oops. I
Oh,
guess got
yeah.
to do something else. And if you're working on the internet in any capacity, you're going to be pivoting for the rest of your life. But don't be afraid to mess up and try things. And, I've tried a lot of things in my private practice and digital and, I'm learning what I'm good at and not good at. I'm learning at what people want, what they don't want. And, those are valuable lessons that are propelling me into this next season of my career with a lot better clarity. So I try not to hold anything too tightly, even in the media work, where there was a time where it was a small group of us doing it. And, people knew who we were and brands knew where we were and the opportunities were coming. And then fast forward a few years, there's hundreds of people doing it, all really, really good. So yeah, that's not going to be the way forward either. So I try to hold all those things loosely because we just don't and not be defined by one particular role or success, but instead just really be open to, okay, I know my skills, I know my talent, and I know my calling. How can I do that this year? Is there a different direction I might use that or something different? And what do I need to learn to take myself there?
One being okay for change. I know when
Mhm.
I got promotion and tenure and I was like, I'm going to be an academic forever, right? Like I loved my academic career. But then I was like, maybe there's something more, right? Like I have a bigger calling. And it was scary. It's
Mhm.
very scary to change, right? Like
Absolutely.
whether you're going into media or going out of media or like dabbling into a menopause, audience that you've never
Mhm.
been into.
Mhm.
So it's okay to be scared to make that change. And if you make the change and it's not the right fit, know that as dietitians, we have a lot of different career paths. If you haven't
Yeah.
listened to other episodes on my podcast, so you can always make another change. You're not
For
stuck
sure.
wherever you're at. Okay. My favorite question, Jenna. If you had a crystal ball, what do you think is coming next in nutrition?
Okay, I'm going to answer this in two different ways. I'm going to answer it traditionally how you asked, and then I'm going to add my own caveat to it. So first, I'm going to say I think what's coming next is a deeper connection between a person's unique physiology whether it's their lab values, genetics, etc., and their unique nutrition approaches. That's the world I'm in, and that I see that coming. And then the way I'll personally answer it, which is what is my wish, like my one little wish for people in health. It's super specific, and it's that we would start doing DEXA bone density scans for women in their 40s, to be very
I love that.
specific.
You're like, can this be the dream? You know
I
what?
know
So
it
funny.
is.
Yeah. So the other day I was like, so I've had 3 kids. My body's not what it was 10
Mm,
years ago. I've nursed for 10 years, 7 years between
yeah.
3 kids. Like everything in my body has changed. And so I started finally going back to the gym, which I love. I was an athlete
Mhm.
all growing up and I love it. And I was like, Daniel, it's my husband. I'm like, I want to go get a DEXA scan. He's like, what is that? I'm like, I want to see, like, I want to get a baseline biomarker of bone density, because I'm a researcher. So, like, sometimes
Mm,
I don't want to know the data because I know what it means.
yeah. I
But
do
it
know what
was
to do with it.
yeah, exactly. But it was so enlightening. I'm like, okay, here's my baseline. And now I have opportunity to see that measurable change. Because I think so much as humans, because we don't collect that baseline, you don't see the change, right? Like you might feel a little different, but if you now I'm going to take another DEXA in 6 months, and I'm like, okay, can I
Mhm.
see changes in fat mass, in skeletal
Yeah,
muscle mass, right? Or can I
absolutely.
make sure that my bone density doesn't decline, which I know it's only going to go downhill? I mean, if you looked at the science, we peak bone mass mid 20s, and then after that, it goes downhill. So, like, how do you optimize your nutrition to support? So, I love that advice.
Yeah, so go get DEXA scans, ladies, if you're in your 40s. It's the one disease, osteoporosis is the one disease that's like completely preventable, but nobody knows until they actually have it. And that should not be the case. And so insurance companies need to start covering them, although they are not very expensive. They can be under $100 sometimes to just get that baseline. And then like, oh, I actually am not optimal bone density. I need to start doing some things differently. And you've taken control of that, which is so cool.
When I actually got mine on Groupon for like $40, I'm
Oh
super
my
cheap.
gosh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, check
For
out Groupon
goodness.
if that's in your area.
Yeah, well, and that's going back to, having that personalized data. DEXA scans and body composition are a piece of that. And to kind of tease that out a little bit more, my hope for women is that we don't care about how much we weigh, but what we're made of.
Right.
And so that is, and not just muscle and fat, but also our bones, because once those things are weak, we can change them, but goodness, what if we had never let them get there? And then we can live with purpose and energy all the days of our lives.
I love it. Such a powerful message. Well, Jenna, it was so awesome having you on. If you don't connect with Jenna, her contact information and ways to connect will be in the show notes. But if you like the episode, make sure you tune into the next episode, because each episode I bring on different dietitians and nutrition experts all across food and healthcare. And so there's always something to learn. Thanks so much.